Councillors, welcome to Snowy Valley's Council Ordinary Meeting of the 17th of June 2021. We would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and pay respect to elders past and present. This meeting is live streamed on Council's website to allow the community to follow Council debates and decisions. Members of the public participating in the meeting agree to have their image, voice and personal information, including name and address, recorded and publicly broadcast. Snowy Valley's Council does not accept liability for any defamatory remarks or inappropriate comments that are made during the course of the meeting. Any part of the meeting that's held in closed session will not be streamed. Please ensure that mobile phones and other electronic devices are turned off or in silent mode for the duration of the meeting, and no recording of voice or images is permitted. In the event of an emergency at a council meeting, please evacuate the building using the nearest exit and follow the instructions given by the wardens, and do not use the lift. If participating in the meeting from an alternative venue, please enact the evacuation plan at that location prior. Council is now operating under temporary provisions expiring on 31 December 2021 of the Local Government General Regulation 2005, which gives Council discretion to allow councillors to attend remotely under exceptional circumstances. Apologies and leave of absence. I have a leave of absence from Councillor Benjamin, and we've already approved the leave of absence for Councillor Wright. I have a mover, Councillor Ham, Councillor Smith. All in favour? That's carried. Any declarations of pecuniary interest? None. Earlier had some public forum. Councillors, before I proceed on, I just would like to acknowledge I have heard of two individuals who received Queen's Birthday honours, only two at the moment. There may be others, but I'd like to give my congratulations to John Melrose of Batlow and also Mick Garraway as well. So congratulations to those two gentlemen.
Okay, yes.
Not in our council area, but it has had a lot of influence with us over the time. So okay as well. So yes, there are some, and I encourage people to nominate people for the Queen's Birthday honours in Australia. Confirmation of minutes 5.1. Ordinary meeting 20th of May 2021. Councillor Cross and Councillor Ham. And the business arising from those? Nothing? Takes us to governance and financial reports. Oh, no. I haven't moved it. Should probably all in favour? Unanimous? Carried. Moving on. Yeah. 10.1 Integrated Planning and Reporting Suite for adoption. Councillor Ham, Councillor Cross, Councillor Ham.
I thought we might go to committee. Somebody else second.
And Councillor Ham and Councillor Cross will move and second that. All in favour? Okay, that's carried. We're in committee. Councillor Ham.
Well, first of all, it was an extraordinary amount of feedback we got on the IPNR, and to the people who made the effort to give any sort of feedback, I congratulate you and thank you very much, because it does take effort, and it is probably was an extreme way to get a community engaged, but engaged people were, and that's what we want. I mean, we want to know what people think. There's just a couple of things I'd like to bring up in particular. First one would be in the attachment 10.1, page 5, and that is a submission number 7. It would be about children's services, but I will just point out that the person who sent that through, I thought it was a very thoughtful submission, thank you. But if I could just pick up about children's services costs saying that we were, Children's Services ran as a deficit of 21,000 in the past year. Yes, that was actually a typo, and I am really, really happy and proud to say that Children's Services in Snowy Valleys Council run at a working profit, and I think that's the way it always should be. So if I could just pick up that point, thank you for making that. Other things, number 8, they talked about having material cultural change that's using Aboriginal signage and place names for out of town environmental features. Great idea. Thank you for that. And then 41, which is right down the end, about FOGO. The comment made was that food and organic waste project seems to be a waste of money. Energy and environment projects and SVC need to be economically justified. Just to have her put in that thoughtful comment, I was wondering if I could just maybe ask the Director of Infrastructure how FOGO is funded and how not only is it not a waste of money, it can actually be making us money. That would be all right.
Certainly, and Mr. Coyce, you might even mention the Minister of the Environment's statement yesterday, I believe, that was going to full FOGO for New South Wales for 2030.
Yeah, through Mr. Mayor. Yeah, very, very much. FOGO implementation's progressing. Things really exciting. The project is largely funded through a funding agreement made available to us through the EPA, which takes into account, as you said, Mr. Mayor, that this will become a regulation, and it is required that we do provide an organic service for our community in the future. So very much expect that will be regulated, and I think the latest advice we've got by 2030 that will occur. So I suppose for us, we're in a really good position. We're able to access a significant amount of funding, which covers the majority of the service, being both the collection service and vision of our own processing. So we'll be able to process that material locally, local jobs. We're doing that in partnership with Belmar. So lots of benefit back to the community, as well as removing that organic material from landfill, where it as it breaks down, it creates methane gas, which has an impact, big impact on our atmosphere, 20 odd more times than carbon dioxide. We also have a benefit locally with that material being processed locally and hopefully reused locally. So lots of benefits to the community out of this. Great opportunity for the community to do its thing, to reduce the carbon footprint by engaging and getting involved in separating organic matter and taking advantage of the service we'll be able to provide.
And is there a funding stream coming out of this? Like the FOGO gets broken down and then you're going to on-sell things?
Yeah. So we did a lot of modelling back in the early days to, and particularly with the processing it here locally, value adding to that material and on selling it. Yeah, there's the intention that would cover all costs and even return it for income. That'll take some time to get to that point, but yeah, certainly that's the aim. So having that seed money up front from the EPA and then being able to value add and generate an income from that product, it does tick all those.
That's the question.
I endorse what Councillor Harrison said to say. If we dictate the way to respond, we should give them an extra fortnight to provide all that feedback. But when I read through, 495 were just copies of what somebody had gone through, and I found that really, really disappointing to find that people hadn't taken the opportunity to do it for themselves, but they had just copied what somebody else had said. And I find that I wondered why we were handed all of these submissions at the Montreal Theatre at our public meeting. It just seemed strange to me.
Yeah. Councillors?
Well, I take it that all those submissions, they were all from the one area. They were all from the Tumbarumba region, were they? Those 500 predominantly 2653 by postcode.
Through Minister, that's all that, and not all, however, the majority.
I agree with Councillor Cross. It's absolutely disingenuous that you would make a submission based on a template. If we'd have wanted to have done that, we'd have put out a survey. I mean, you know, predominantly they're all based around the SVC and the misinformation that's being peddled about that, unfortunately, and SRV, sorry. And once again, you know, it's the you find it hard to believe that people can be like sheep. You know, well, why would you do that? I mean, if you want to have some genuine into what council is considering in its long-term financial viability, well, why would you just go and copy and paste the same thing from 500 people and submit it? I mean, it's just completely ridiculous that they would do that. I mean, it to me just demonstrates just how lackluster the whole Save Tumbarumba Shire campaign is. You know, that's how they operate. So once again, we don't get the real facts and we don't get the real concerns out in the community. We just get this push to demerge based on, you know, the wants of the people of Orange and Tumbarumba, not the overwhelming community. I mean, the overwhelming community haven't spoken in these submissions about these concerns. I mean, they're obviously reasonably satisfied with the explanation that we've given, and I think what explanation we have given in relation to our financial situation is very reasonable. I mean, we're not imploding. You know, we're not in a situation that local government hasn't found itself in for the last 50 years. It's essentially about making sure that with the possible drying up of funds at a federal and state level because of the massive burden that the state and federal governments have had to encounter with the economy in relation to COVID and fires and floods and other natural disasters. They've had to shore up the economy by stimulating it, and we've had to keep people in jobs. You know, and we just can't be guaranteed that usual income that we receive from the state and federal governments is going to be forthcoming in the short term. So we need to make sure that whatever services that we're offering as a council, and they're numerous, you know, whether it be the roads we travel on or the footpaths or the garbage collections, there's just so much we do that people don't recognise and see. But we need to be able to have that debate with the community about what their expectations are in relation to servicing and whether they want to continue the current service levels. If that's the case, then we have to make sure that we can pay for it. And that's exactly where we're heading down. And I commend the council for being brave enough to have that decision 3 months out from an election, because, you know, as much as we're not committing to it, we're having the conversation. I think it's been very honourable and brave of the staff and the elected representatives around this table to actually have that discussion with the community.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Smith.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'm looking at the graph representation of the feedback that we have received and looking at submissions received by the topic. I find it quite extraordinary that the long-term financial plan has attracted 523 responses compared to the overall IPNR feedback of only 4 responses. The sustainability plan, which clearly is one of the most significant parts of this whole suite of documents, also only received 4 responses. The revenue policy, 1 response. The fees and charges, 7 responses. and the operational plan and budget, 9 responses. I think that there is a very clear bias and skewed representation on this, and when we look at where the submissions came from in the demographics, all of those, well, a large proportion, 506 of those responses came from postcode area 2653, which happens to be my local postcode. Compared to the Tumut postcode, there were only 16 responses in total. So I think there is something seriously wrong with these figures of the responses, and I find that maybe we shouldn't necessarily put a lot of weight on those skewed responses. We should look at the ones that come from the whole demographic area as a more realistic feedback on the whole IPNR documents.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. One thing we may suggest later on when we do the sustainability plan, change that to financial sustainability. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just following on from what's been taken by two other councillors, I'm interested to know just what proportion of weighting we put on the template that was supplied to council. It does concern me that the 450 plus people did take time to put their name to a submission. I would have been far more interested to see that they were posted rather than potentially handed in person in Montreal, or did some people hand in bulks of signed? I'm not sure. Could someone answer that question?
Package.
So not only did it not get handled in person, but it came like a survey, as you mentioned, which to me democratically erodes the level of information that's part of that template. Someone can sign a letter even without reading it and not know what they've done. So I have a concern about the fact that it's not a democratic process in the way that I would certainly see it. But I assume that when we have 4 template letters, we have considered the content of those 4 different template letters in our assessment paper, and as we've done. I'm just concerned that we perhaps, as a council, may have had an opportunity. Well, right now we have an opportunity to learn from the process we went through to get those responses. And some of the things that concern me is when we look at page 23 in this report, we've got committee meetings and community meetings hosted by external parties. And it concerns me that we were leading ourselves, not necessarily leading our community, allowing people who had hidden agendas to misinform the community that came to their meetings that they called. And I do hope that we will look at this process and develop it to a more strengthened process, because I think we've got the response that will come from doing something like that. So I know that's comment rather than a question, but that's how I see the situation.
Thank you, Councillor. I will suggest that form letters and filling them out and then handing them in is part of the democratic process. And just the way as putting your name in the petition is, but there are better ways to do it. But it certainly made a point, and as I said earlier, it was part of the theatre of the theatre where they were delivered, and so that was, I guess, that was part of the strategy. So with that, anyone else? Councillor Cross.
These documents are the most important documents we're going to be producing, and I think that given that we've just got templates back, shows a remarkable level of respect for the importance of these documents. We have workshopped these documents so carefully. We've gone out in public consultation. We've done everything possible to get community impact. And I really do find it very disrespectful that only that we were given these templates rather than actual responses. And I'd also like to make a point about the sustainability plan, that whilst that contains what we want to do in the future, it's really about starting a conversation about how we're going to balance service delivery with our financial situation. It's not and I don't know how many times we have to say it, but the special rate variation is not a done deal. It is for the next council to decide, and I don't know how many times we have to spell that out to people before they get it. One of the things that I noticed in the documents, so what the full block is people complain about the consultants that we've been using. And I thought seriously about that and thought, well, in my household, I outsourced to a specialist to do my plumbing, to do my electricals. I could probably do them myself if I do them. But often it's much more cost effective and you get a much better quality if you outsource to an expert. And that's what we do as a council. That is what council's role is, to make sure that the infrastructure we build, the plans that we make are the best quality. And it would be wonderful to have staff that could do all that. But I challenge anyone in this room that they could do everything without having to go to some kind of consultant to get it in. So I really just wanted to make that. And I think, if you look at the skate park and the pump tracks that we've done, they're a good example of getting an expert in to make sure that those facilities are well used and beautifully planned. So,
Thank you. Sam.
I've just got 2 points. I was wondering if I could speak to the CFO about the SRV. With all these submissions and what's been in the media, the people I'm most worried about is the vulnerable in our community. And I feel there's a lot of fear that, our rates, one of these submissions said our rates are going to go up 60%. So I'd really like to hear from the CFO about how percentages work, how rates are not going to go up 60%, and also to the very vulnerable people in the community, how we would look after them.
Super.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Mayor. Percentages are a mathematical issue, and I think they're basically taught at secondary school. So, sorry, it's not that hard. What we're proposing in our SRE scenario is that the general rates will go up by 12% in year one. Now you have to add the rate peg to that. So there's another 2%, possibly, we don't know yet, but let's say it's 2%. So the rates will go up 14%. Then the year after, we're proposing exactly the same again. So what you get is you have 14% that you increase the rates before, and then you actually increase the rates on those 14% as well. That's why in the end, we get to a higher than just add them up figure. And that is called compounding. It's the same in your mortgage, it's the same when you're paying back your house or your car. It's not a new concept, but it doesn't add up to 60%. I think the people who were talking about 60% or similar figures were referring to rates harmonisation first, which we all acknowledge there are some increases coming under rates harmonisation, and then they just kept adding and adding and adding further the rates increases. The other thing is these increases are going to be only on the general rate if they get through, and not on water, sewer or waste charges. So it's only a small part of your rates bill that will have the increase. And as for vulnerable people, there is hardship provisions in place under the Local Government Act and under Council's own policy. We already have them. there's also nothing new, and people will be able to apply under hardship provisions if they have problems paying for their rents.
Excellent. Thank you. And then on a happier story, I noticed that we donations 261,000 is our contribution that we give in donations, and I'm particularly excited to see the new donations to the Roosevelt Golf Club, Cancoban Country Club, Tumbarumba Golf Club to be in line with the former Tumen clubs being funded. So that's terribly positive. And also the Section 355 committees transferring over promised insurance assistance. Now that is promised, that's written in black and white, it's promised. So I look forward to meeting with those committees and seeing that council has actually followed through and paid for the insurance.
Mr. Mayor, through you, I noticed that there seems to be some lack of regularity in the donation proposals that we have here for 2022. And I wonder at how each of these donations are arrived at, and how long have some of these been historically in place, and how many people or groups have applied and been rejected? Is there a common policy, or do we have an opportunity here in the next new council to look at these donations and make sure that we're not perhaps missing opportunities to support community groups, or perhaps supporting community groups that now no longer need the support we're giving? And I'm just concerned that we haven't got consistency in the appearance of this, and the appearance is what I'm talking about, but you wonder why some of the football clubs get support and other football clubs mentioned, golf clubs get support and other golf clubs. They might already be getting significant donations that aren't listed. But I just feel that there's some historical embedded degree in this paper, and perhaps we need to look at reviewing that as in the future.
Certainly something that council can do in the future. Councillor Pritchard.
Mr. Mayor, I'm not running for council again, so it's a couple of sessions to go.
Thank you for your input today.
After what I've got to say. As far as special rate variation is concerned, we've had them over the years for special purposes, and we've been for a finite amount of money for a specific purpose with an end date when that money is paid already. And this is a permanent special variation rate, and I've not experienced that in my lifetime. And it's really cost shifting from state government to local government. That's what it's all about. So it's a higher political level. As far as community consultation is concerned, many of the I'm concerned about is serious factors. And it's our responsibility to ask that. It's number one, because that's their political views. And I know it's not very logical, but it's just me. And I feel very uncomfortable indeed making decisions that we put up before, which I won't have any say over. It puts a burden on the incoming council, and it's got a side effect of creating an election campaign. So we'll end up with that divided council, those that have voted one way or the other way, and I can't see them coming together in a harmonious way that we have. So that's what I feel about it. I'd vote for I'd actually don't vote on this at all. That is, yeah, in the new laws, you have to vote one way or the other. That's why I could have stated down and what are the issues. But I think there'll be letting people down. I'm going to vote against this because for those reasons. I think the council standards for the one job, and that's what it's all about. And it's not in balance.
Thank you, Councillor Pritchard. And the special rate variation, as Councillor Cross said, will be voted on by next council. It's just an option that they'll have. But it's also an option being explored by most councils.
South Wales. So we're certainly not unusual, and we're not at the high end as well.
No, we're going to be about $10, about $10 or something.
50% going on. So, couldn't really measure it.
Okay.
I mean, the reality is, you know, unfortunately, and I agree with Councillor Pritchard, I mean, it's not our intention to pass on burden and costs if we don't have to. The reality is we will keep fighting for a change in this cost shifting. That's
the best scenario.
That's our best scenario, and we will keep doing that. We'll advocate with state and federal governments to fix that hole. But the reality is people's health insurance goes up 20% a year. People, you know, we have a flood event, we have a bushfire, people, home and contents insurance goes up, and people don't blink an eyelid at it. And, you know, as much as it is an impost, I'm not saying it isn't, and $500 a year to somebody is a lot of money, but, you know, we provide a lot of services, probably a lot of services that we shouldn't be providing. But we choose to do that, and that's our choice. So that's the discussion we need to have.
Councillor Lane, would you like to go out? All done. Over. And across. Over. Okay, so councillors, we have the recommendations there, but can we run past hand across whether the financial sustainability?
Yes.
Okay. Any other comment? Put the motion in favour? Yes. Councillor Pritchard. Thank you, councillors. Governance and finance, making of the rates and charges, 10.2. Plethora of recommendations there, 1 to 11. Do I have a mover? And Martin, Councillor Martin.
This is the day that we pass for rates to be harmonised, which is often, since 2016 has been coming. And as the CFO alluded to, some people rates will go up quite significantly. Not a huge amount of people, but there are some. And on the other side, there are some people whose rates are actually dropping. And to those people, would you mind telling other people? It'd be nice to have that good publicity. But and just in the second section there, number 5 and the domestic waste charges, we've just passed those in our finance and our fees. Just clarifying that. Thank you.
So the blunt reality is those people whose rates go down are subsidising those people whose rates go up. So,
Your work is
moving on. Do we have any other speakers? Put the motion all in favour. Councillor Pritchard. You're all voting for? Rates.
This is the standard rates harmonisation. Which means that
You vote against, okay. That's Councillor Pritchard against. 10.3 governance and finance report on the financial performance as on 30 April 2021 year to date. That's a question.
Just a couple of questions. One of them is the employee costs that have risen significantly, but you're saying that natural disaster money will come in and cover those costs. And I just wanted to ask the CFO if the money coming in, if there is money coming in to cover those extra costs that we haven't envisaged happening.
Second.
Sure, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Cross. Yes, the money coming in, so to speak, is actually accounted for in that table. You'll see that other charges and fees are above budget. So part of that is already accounted for. And the good news is we have just received a payment from the state for $5.6 million in the first instalment against our claim.
Thank you. And the other issue thing I wanted to ask about was the RMCC ordered works, 1.9 million. Is that the private works or is that business as usual?
Mr. Mayor, the works we do under the RMCC are road maintenance contract works. We do that in partnership with Transport for New South Wales, and that's the maintenance of state roads. So it's separate to our work we do on local roads, and we put it in with our commercial works. So yeah, and we've been fortunate this year to secure a fair bit of additional work through that contract, which brings in.
So that private works, which I noticed in the previous scenario with you complaining about them, but they're actually bringing in money, generating an income.
Generating revenue for council, yes, and also giving us the opportunity to ensure that we've got experienced skilled staff that help deliver those works. So, and plant equipment and everything that goes along with that, which benefits the community as a whole, gives us more scope to local infrastructure as well.
That's a win-win.
Very much.
Thank you.
Can I just ask the CFO a couple of questions about the overall council summary? So our operating result at the moment is negative 481, much better than we are anticipating at this time. Are we backing back on? Are we getting better? Is our loss going to be not as bad as what we had been anticipating? And also, I don't understand the last column about original budget. What that means? If you could clarify that.
Thank you, Councillor Hem. The quarterly budget review was presented to Council last month, and it forecast pretty much a $3.6 million deficit at the end of the year. And I think we are on track to achieve that. This is purely a snapshot at a certain time.
Yeah, sure.
And it's also influenced by the phasing of the budget. So if something's out of whack in the phasing of the budget compared to when we actually spent the money or received the money, that will influence that particular month. So the quarterly budget review is probably the more accurate forecast as of for the end of the year. The final column, original budget, is the total budget for the year, whereas the budget year to date is the base budget to April.
So that final column is saying we'll make a profit of $4 million, but that's with capital grants included.
That is correct.
And you take that out and somebody will down. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm a bit more visual and I'm looking at the pie chart. I'm very interested to know $7.7 billion of income from other, identified as other income. And we have an idea of what that is about. And I also want to comment on the interest and investment revenue of $402,000. To me, that's quite remarkable considering the interest rates that are around at the moment. It's a pretty good result.
Super.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Smith. Other income compiles everything that is not grant funded or rates. So it can be anything from contributions to certain reimbursements from states and similar things. The obviously the investment return at the moment is not terribly good, but that is part of the current economic climate.
Given that situation, that's quite a good result.
Okay. Councillor.
She doesn't agree. She doesn't. Not what she.
Anybody who was sitting around this table 10 or 15 years ago.
Yes, yes. What are you talking about?
Say, given the current
Given. Councillors, we've got those recommendation there, which shared the report. All in favour? Thank you. Statement of investments. Again, Councillor Lata. Councillor Ham.
I was just going to ask about the breakup of those cash investments. I noticed there that we've stuck on with National Australia Bank at 0.35% on the 27th for a year. So the Bendigo Bank seems to only get smaller parcels, 250, but the interest rates are high. Now, I know that depends on when you lodge them, but have we reached what's the breakup of how much we can put with these banks? Because I know, like Bendigo Bank, we obviously get a return to community that we don't get with these other banks. So is there some reason why we can't put more with Bendigo Bank?
Sure, Mayor, Councillor Martin. Yes, there is a reason. We have limits of how much we can invest in certain classes of banks, and they are rated from A through to unrated. I believe Bendigo Bank is currently rated BBB, which limits our investments to 30%. Unfortunately, Bendigo Bank has been rated downwards over the last few months or maybe half year, and that may be the issue here, that we weren't able to invest in anything. But overall, we do have an investment advisor that on a monthly basis advises us where we can get the best return and where we are able to follow our investment policy as well.
So just in
Can I just make a statement? Carry on. And I'd just like to point out that I am director of the Adelaide Bendigo Bank. And as such, I just want to make sure that people know that we won't be making a decision on this today if we were anything to do with this. So, but hand back to Councillor.
Yeah, I'd just suggest that it would be my view that we obviously need to try and get the best return for our investment, but we need to take into account those other items that aren't necessarily seen when we make those decisions. So it would be my view that if those limits aren't at their capacity in regard to what money we can put with what bank, that those decisions maybe come back to council for consideration, because it would be good to get a picture of how much Bendigo Bank is actually putting into the community in kind to support our communities. And if we can get a comparable interest rate with them as compared with one of the other banks, that then I think we should be. My view is I think we should be supporting those that want to help us. So it might not necessarily be Bendigo Bank. I mean, there might be other local banks that are here as well that can maybe assist us. But I think it's something we should look at to sort of maximise our community.
Again, through the Mayor, Councillor Lara, our investment policy discusses how the staff will go down this process, and now is probably not the right time. When the new council is in place, we will bring that investment policy forward. It is hard to evaluate. There's a number of banks that operate in our area that provide money to community groups. It's hard to evaluate that, but we can ensure that we deal with that in the investment policy, so we're giving the staff the direction on how you want that invested. So that's done on a policy basis, so that we're consistent. And I think we'll bring that forward to the movement. Councillor Roosevelt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just looking at the pie graph on page 37, I'm interested that we might consider corporate ethics as well when we make the decisions. And with the largest investment we have here is the AMP, given the history of some situations that go on, we may not be seen to be having that corporate ethical stand by having that large amount of investment.
Again, we can consider that as part of the policy position.
Just looking at the Bushfire Local Economic Recovery Fund, I know there's quite a few community groups and council hanging out for the next round to be announced. Has there been any indication when that's going to happen? Is there any
Imminent.
no use writing a letter, making a deputation? Just
Right, who's to know?
Through the chair, Mr. Mayor, we have requested a deputation with the Deputy Premier Barilaro. It is something we can mention.
excellent. Thank you.
Just in relation to that Bendigo Bank one, so there's another one there. There's two side by side. So it's $1,057,811. It seems quite an odd figure, but there's obviously two investments of the same amount on the same day with the same maturity date. So it's well done.
Through you, Mr. Mayor and Councillor, there must have been rollovers at this time, and there were rollovers including the interest payable at that stage, which probably was a mistake, but it's not hurting us in any way.
And if I may add to that, through the mayor, the two investments is because we split that between the two Bendigo Railway banks operating in the area. So they're equally invested.
Okay. Moving on, we put the motion. All in favour? Councillor Whistle.
Oh, sorry.
Carried. Takes to 10.5 Community Radio 2 TVR, which we call Sounds of the Mountains, 96.3 lease renewal. 4 recommendations there. Mover, Councillor Smith. Seconder, Councillor Ross. Any discussion? Yes.
Absolutely crucial part during bushfires. It was really about the only form of communication that people were able to access. So, and we have an absolutely wonderful person who runs it, who's just so enthusiastic and so accommodating to any group that wants to promote whatever thing they're having on at the moment. So, to me, it's just a no-brainer if we do this. What I am curious is, do we have any statistics on how many people actually do listen to that radio station?
Look, there were some statistics around earlier. We can ask over.
I think it'd be really good to know just how far and wide the transmission spreads.
Certainly just listening to their station times, there are people who listen to it on the internet. Okay, we've got
I was just going to reiterate what Councillor Ross said and just thank David Eisenhower for his ongoing support of this council and this community, because without him, essentially, in my opinion, that radio station would be the product that it is today. And it's not only a great community benefit, but, in times of emergency, it's a go-to point for local residents to find out information. And Dave Eisenhower is one of those community members that just goes beyond the what's expected of him in that situation and provides so much. So just a big thank you from the council and thank you.
and all the volunteers and the sponsors.
I love the decision.
Yeah, he could be working in any radio station in Sydney or Melbourne, he's
It's really good.
Put the motion, all in favour? unanimous. Thank you. Update on future directions of council committees. So there's two recommendations there. And a whole list of committees that we table. And then we've got quite a few committees to go through. Councillor Hand, Councillor Smith, any discussion on this?
Just that there has been an awful lot of discussion about this. It's been workshopped. I think every committee has been supported by council staff. There have been some hiccups along the way that I've known about, and I actually would just really like to thank the council staff that are here and others, because if ever I put through something, it's been acted on straight away to make this as smooth as possible. So very much appreciated. Big move, and I hope that a lot of these committees now can apply for massive amounts of funding, and they continue to thrive.
I think the change is always very challenging for anybody. It's been really valuable to be part of Talbingo's progress through all of these changes, because they've been really, really challenged by it. But I think now that they've come through the other side, they can see how exciting it's going to be for them, that it will give them a much greater voice and feel being in charge of their destiny. So I look forward to continuing to be involved with them as they try to become an incorporated body.
Thank you, Councillor.
Speaking for just recalling some of the fear and expressions of criticism levelled against this council at the very beginning, where we were going to disband and all 355 committees, and it was quite a campaign against who we were and what we were. And I just compliment the staff on how they have managed this process and taken our wonderful volunteers who stand up for so many years right across Snowy Valley Council, and have taken them to a place where they are comfortable and accept the fact that this is the new horizon and the good space, and council has taken a very positive step to achieve this. It's a wonderful compliment to the staff being part of the process.
Thank you, Councillor Smith.
I think it's worth mentioning that the background is that most of these committees that are now going to be dissolved were not typical 355 or Section 355 committees, in as much as they didn't really exist for the purposes that Section 355 determines. And they were more community organisations that came under council's umbrella, partly for financial reasons, things like insurance status. They came under council's insurance budget. So one of that turned out to be one of the main issues for a lot of the groups, that they were going to have to fund their own insurance. And I'm pleased to note that the council now has agreed to actually reimburse their costs as part of the process of tidying up this whole council committee situation. And I think that's a great achievement of this council, that we've been able to do that during this term, to go back to what Section 355 committees are really all about, and to give a greater voice and a greater opportunity for these community groups, organisations to become self-governing in that sense. They are now able to be completely open and free about what they feel and think, and are able to put their ideas to councils in a more relaxed kind of a way, whereas previously they were a committee of council and therefore couldn't really tell council what to do. Now they're in a position where they're able to speak freely, and I think that's a great thing.
Just got a quick question for the analysis. These Council 355 committees, whatever they held and whatever they own, technically belong to council. Some of them have quite substantial financial assets at the bank. Are they held in our bank account? So when they hand over, will that mean that our reserves will drop, or are they held in their own separate accounts?
Thank you, Mayor. No, they're not held in our account. We have a few reserves that are quite low. It's in the few thousands of dollars, not in the hundreds of thousands. But most of these committees hold their own bank accounts.
And 355 committees, are they supposed to hold their own accounts, or are they supposed to have money spent by council?
The money is meant to be held by council, but this is a historical thing, and a lot of our Section 355 committees involved ex-giants held their own bank.
Thank you. Question? Councillor Wilson.
One last question, if I may.
I thought I had the last one.
I thought it'd be 2 minutes.
Go ahead.
On the donations proposal, there's an X355 committee promised insurance. Is that for 1 year or is it going to be?
Mayor, Councillor Wilson, that's for 1 year because the donations are approved for 1 year, but the new council will be able to make a decision whether they continue that.
It is the understanding, my understanding. In case I'm not going to say, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, let's put the motion all in favour. That's unanimous. Moving on, so we'll go through all the committees. Development committees, no mover. Councillor Smith.
It's been my,
Councillor Wu, Councillor Ham. Go, Councillor Smith.
yeah, it's been my pleasure to work with the Batley Development League for a couple of years now, and I congratulate them on achieving their new status, and they're now to be formed. The wording, lost it here somewhere.
Culture. Community
And Cultural Association, and that reflects their status very, very well, and I wish them all the best for their future.
All in favour? No. Okay, Chairman, Christmas and Chairman. Coming to the room. Councillor Lada, Councillor Ham. Any discussion? All in favour? Carried. Camp Hudson. Continuation of Camp Hudson management. Councillor Lada, Councillor Ross.
No, I think there was a bit of confusion around this particular one, and it was probably the one in there that caused me the most grief because, but there is a lot of background behind the scenes stuff going on with this that is probably in confidence. So I'm confident that with the information that I have, and I think the executive of the Camp Hudson organisation should now have that should be a prosperous opportunity and committee for them into the future. So we wish them all the best.
Just a question.
Into the council or into the community?
What from the huts that they hire out, is there any money that is generated from that? Is it back to council?
No, I believe it all goes back into the facilities.
They've got quite a stockpile of funds for
Yes.
renovations and the like there. And it is quite a complicated thing because we actually have a lease with National Parks, which is coming up for expiration. So, there was a number of very difficult factors in that decision. I know the executive here have dealt with.
Just on that point, I've only been out there once and was just so impressed by what a lovely facility it is. So well maintained. So congratulations.
Thank you.
So it's only going to continue until mid-November, is that right? By the recommendations of the council. Number 4, again, of the lease expiring 30th of November, and that's when it will be.
That's when it'll be a new lease, but
Or a new lease. So I just want to clarify.
not with us, with them,
So,
between National Parks and the Camp Hudson Committee.
right, so the Camp Hudson
Middleman, cutting the middleman.
Camp Hudson Management Committee will continue, but it won't be a 355.
All in favour? Unanimous. Falling leaf. Councillor Larder, Councillor Cross.
Once again, this has been a really wonderful committee over a number of years with Unit, and they continue to do excellent things. It's had its battles, and often had difficulties attracting people to. Quite often was left to the same 2 or 3 people to do everything, as a lot of committees do. But they soldiered it on, and once again, we thank them for the wonderful commitment they've given to the region, and wish them all the best.
Councillor Cross.
It's certainly been something that's brought people to future. I remember seeing people just standing with their photos of the leaves and the changing colours, and thinking, wow, so good. And as an aside, but not really anything to do with this, I just love the rubbish bins with the leaves. It's very symbolic of what we are.
All in favour? Unanimous. Camp Haven United Volunteers Association. Councillor Smith, Councillor Ham.
Yes, again, this association worked tirelessly. There's a small group of people which just quite regularly and work very, very hard for the local community. And it's again an example where they hold their own funds, that they will be better off being independent. They do a lot of work and they raise funds themselves through their op shop. They actually were a registered association or an corporation to begin with, until they became a 355 committee. So now they're able to go back to that status, and they've been able to get their name back, prove that incorporated. So that's what they will now become. And, we wish them the best. Thank you. Continue to support.
And, but I will say, my council staff have been working closely with them. They are still exhibiting quite a lot of fear that they're going to be stuck with a really big bill. So through you, Mr. Mayor, can I just check with the CFO that their insurance will be paid, and also they also have a bit of confusion about what should they be insuring. Do they need $20 million public liability? So I realise that you have staff working on this, but just a confirmation that yes, council will be paying for the insurance.
Councillor Ham, Core is certainly part of that donations bucket. We expect that they will apply for the reimbursement of the insurance on family. Whether or not council will then be in position to pay the entire amount is open, but we have made that total amount of donations available big enough to what we think is required. And yes, I can't give any advice on what insurance they will need. I think they will need their own legal advice on that.
And they're struggling with that.
They certainly need public liability insurance. There's not that.
It's a very much.
I know this is not going to be a problem, but eventually it ends up being a problem anyway. Is it possible that you could perhaps provide some thought, and I know we've spoken about this more generally with soccer clubs and netball and all that sort of stuff. These insurance companies, I can see what's going to happen. They're going to charge top dollar for all these individual outlets. They're all going to get individual quotes. They're all through the roof. So can I suggest that perhaps we have a coordinated approach with all these groups that were, exiting, so that perhaps we can approach a broker with a bulk deal policy through council or whatever we can do. I don't know how you're going to do it, but provide some economy of scale with this, because I can just see what'll happen. You know, they're going to get charged.
I would have thought that,
$3,500.
I would have thought that would have been something that the Chamber of Commerce or the Community Foundation could take on. But that's
Well,
my
perhaps, yeah,
perspective.
I don't know, but I think given the fact that we've sort of exited them, and you know, we've got a
Yeah,
duty of care to at
yeah.
least get them on their
I'll
way.
ask Jones if she's.
Through Councillor Lara, as part of the initiation, council is obviously involved with statewide, and they have a community program, and we have given them information to all of the communities back in November, and we are still happy to assist
Yes.
in the process, should they request it, and get in touch with us and ask.
What is a community program?
It's a community program statewide runs for exactly that purpose. So
Statewide insurance.
community groups running small events, small budgets.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Smith.
As 355 committees, we have always had a councillor present at their meeting, supporting them and council staff to assist them. Can I ask the question what level of support they will be offered now that they are becoming an independent incorporated body?
I imagine there'd be up to invites as well, but I would give over to Jones.
There's no intention to change the model. Should the new incorporated entity still wish to have that level of participation? However, the new council may have different ideas around resourcing. When we talk about citizens.
Councillor Pinchot.
I think it is about the insurances, because what are these? What's the legal structure of these bodies?
Incorporated entities.
So they have really, well, the corporations no name free. So that's evident. Protocol that has to follow. So I think those insurance won't be able to continue. Because it's pretty hard to get volunteers to join.
They will be assisted, and there's also fair trading assistance as well, if necessary.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, every one of these committees has different funds, different activities and events, from shops to events to community markets to maintaining facilities. Those insurance needs are not a one size fits all.
Okay, thank you, councillors. Put it to vote. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Block the turf. Rockers here. Councillor Lara, Councillor Cross.
No, look, once again, this has all the hallmarks of being a stayer, and this has grown in stature from the day that that small group of individuals started this concept, and it's grown and grown and grown, and it's going to end up being, I think, a New South Wales benchmark event in time that people from all over the state, perhaps in the state, will come to visit. So I wish them success.
Nothing further. All in favour? Unanimous. Rosewood Community Shed Committee. Councillor Hand. Councillor Lara. Again.
Yeah, just speaking on behalf of Councillor Wright, who can't be here today, but thank you to the Rosewood Community Shed Committee, who is called the Old Fire Shed, for being so helpful with this process.
Thank you. All in favour? Carried. Unanimous. Tobigo Ferguson Ratepayers Association. Councillor Cross. Councillor Hand. Councillor Cross.
I really admire the way the Tobago Progress Association has done this whole process. It's been very, very initially, they were very quickly into the process with them because it was change and we weren't quite sure how it was going to work. But I think as we've moved through, they can see enormous benefits for them to be independent of us, but still having our involvement.
Thank you. All in favour? Unanimous. 10:15, dissolution of Tumbarumba Historical Society. Councillor Ham. Councillor Cross.
Thank you to the Tumbarumba Historical Society for their work on here. A bit complicated because it's on council asset where the visitor centre is. Recommend everyone go and have a look at it. There are some things on loan from the Powerhouse Museum that now need to be insured. Once again, reassurance that council will help pay with that insurance. And of course, being a museum, the asset register is enormous. So thank you to everyone, particularly Ron and Kat, for all the work you put into making this happen.
In favour? Unanimous again. Friends of Stockwood Gardens. Councillor Cross.
Once again, this has been another very understated group of individuals who have essentially gone about maintaining that beautiful park since 2001. And it's a beautiful council asset that many people have been able to enjoy and have weddings. In fact, we've even had photos there ourselves with the council profile. So, it's a beautiful place. Continues to be a beautiful place, and just wish them every success and thank them for all their efforts past and future.
All in favour? Unanimously. Friends of the Library, Tumbarumba.
There's not much more to be said again, and these people that work for the community, not just in the library, they've done a lot of work in street stores and been raising funds for various entities around the precinct of the library and other parts of Tumbarumba. And they've given up their time. Now they continue, I think, as a volunteer group, but not as a council. Again, thank you for those people.
And thank you. Regional Health Services Advisory Committee, 1018. Cross, Councillor Ham. Favour? Or do you want to say something? Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay, because I'm a little bit against this, and the reason is because there's not a councillor on the LPAC committee for Tumbarumba, and as a councillor, I've always thought that this is all happening and I'm getting feedback. And I know there is a council person on there, but they have no idea what's happening in that committee, and it's so vital. And I would stress for the new council that comes in to write to the LA Committee of Government to apply for a position on it.
We can do that before we
Or if you don't understand.
I did bring this up at the last meeting.
Thank you.
And it is, you can apply any time
Okay.
just go to the region district page, or I can give you the details of the person just in the chat.
Yeah.
But they're more than happy.
Yeah, makes sense.
It does. It makes perfect sense, and certainly from my perspective, being on the tutor, it is a much more sensible arrangement to be able to have those, because the services themselves are all there, and it was obvious that it was becoming very difficult for them to come to another meeting, so they saw it as a duplication. So I strongly urge you to get in touch and give you sections details.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Chapter.
No, I've got the vacancy about this one. I was on the budget committee, and Alan Thompson had been on it, left in assistant. Been involved with it all the way. But the facility there is takings committee. I was outspoken on one of the things in the appointment. He said I hadn't applied. So I said I put an application in and it had been sold. Yeah. So I thought, well, if you're not wanted, you're not wanted. and I haven't raised the issue before, but I think there's a place for the regional health committee with council, because when this COVID thing came out in advance of what the area health service was saying, for example, meeting with John Lardner suggested we reduce council face-to-face contact. We've got a meeting with the area health service. That's not advised. A few days later, they did it. And then in the last, there's been a few things like this. They don't want council involved. It's that they want the public to say that we're doing things. They don't want any involvement in the actual health delivery. Quietly, the area health service has been opposing us getting anesthetic GPs, surgeons, obstetricians who desire across the board. All the country customers have been wound backwards. I think it's all expensive. There's some of the regions do this, not necessarily the doctors at the hospital. Overall, the medical services, John's group, whatever. And the base hospitals are good, but everything else has been wound back. And it has an impact not so on the local people's health, but the first thing that people who are worrying about coming to these country towns is what the health services like. And when you don't have somebody to give an anaesthetic or assess a problem, so they will say that you can see it on telehealth, but you can't intubate a dying person in telehealth. And we're in a big industrial area, a big tourism area, and if people have an anaphylactic reaction, they go to the hospital. There's not somebody in the area who can intubate them. Because they don't come here. People here, I know, retire back to Walla or somewhere, or those places. If we had no future, we'd be carrying on about it. But we may be the population going backwards a bit because of the change in rural activities. But the long-term future of this area is very, very sound, as you all know. And, I think we have to fight the time to get full services at the hospital. I don't think we get full-time residents at the hospital. We should be GPs who go up to the hospital and call them. We should. I really think I won't go any further. I think we should have a reason for service.
Thanks, Councillor Pritchard. It does list there other advocacy groups and communities and organisations. Councillors, just before we put we'll put the motion all in favour. Yes. It's an abstention from Councillor Pritchard. So I'd just like to, from the chair, thank all these organisations and all the volunteers that we so rely on to keep our community functioning and beautiful and healthy. So thanks to all the people involved in all the communities and all the other communities that we don't have input into working so hard, particularly these people who have served so long.
So what's the climate change adaptation? Did we do that? So ask a bit, because I'm asleep, we're talking.
No, we've got you as an answer, no. We've got you as voting against that.
The climate change adaptation. The last one, yeah.
It's Mr. Holcomb.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor, and I believe the climate change adaptation committee is we advertised for people to be part of that committee at a recent council meeting or council workshop. It was agreed that the council itself would form that committee and be the climate change adaptation.
Leading up that last year.
We did go through the public seeking.
We didn't get to
Councillor Pritchard, we've been workshopping out of our council workshops for the last once a month. Possibly. Yeah, you missed the last one. So,
It was in the last council meeting.
An issue.
and certainly we've been promoting your cause and their cause, and that's one of the things that we discussed when you were present with David Shoebridge, and we've further prosecuted the case of council's green credentials with Minister Keane the other day as well. So I think we're on a bit of a roll on that one. I think we're going forward, which is good. Councillors, 11.1, Tuna Bulls donation request.
Carry.
So we've got quite a lot. We've got 10 recommendations there. We have prior to the meeting had a representation from the Tuna Bulls who see this as a regional facility and a very important one for the rugby community and for the sort of broader community based around the Bulls area. So do I have a mover? Councillor Ham, and a second. Councillor.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I was wondering if we could get the Director of Infrastructure to speak about this project and how we get the long-term life of it and make it financially viable for Snorri Valleys Council. And it's certainly a project I 100% endorse. It's fabulous, and having seen the plans, can't wait for it to happen. So personally, I'd love to give all the support for it. Just wondering what your opinion is.
So you're asking the executive director some questions. And the first one, well, let's just do them as questions. The first question is,
What do you think of it?
Director.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Councillor Ham. Look, I think it's a great issue, real benefit to the club and to the broader community. I suppose, we've been having a lot of discussions about sustainability and affordability. So for us, as an officer of council, sort of working towards making sure that we get the full benefit of the potential that could come out about this, but also give consideration to and to make sure that people perform and not become a cost burden in the longer term.
Thank you. Do you have another question?
The only I think I was a bit concerned about, and if someone could explain to me why we have to give a letter of support for the project, but then also priority rank it against a grant that we're also putting in, which of course the council is always going to rank their own project first.
Suggestion we put a line through. That's that is 5A. So the suggestion, if it's okay with me, moving the seconder, that we have a letter of endorsement from SVC to support the project. So, from Anne on, we just remind you that. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I personally don't think the state government or whoever organising the grant should be asking us to do any ranking because it's a conflict. We're putting in another grant in the same funding grant. So I mean, they can't expect us to be ticking our own grant application.
Marking it down. Did you have another question? Thank you. Any other further questions? Councillor Smith.
I think it's worth noting that the Tuna Bulls have got a secured government funding, federal government funding of $500,000 towards their project. That this request that they're making of council at this point in time is relatively minor, but it is quite necessary to secure their project actually being able to get off the ground. For that reason, it's one that we should support.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Cross.
Or 5C, they're asking for us a contribution from us for 75,000. The director of infrastructure, is that an in-kind contribution or is it actually a financial contribution?
Yeah, through Mr. Mayor. From my understanding, the intention is that he would do the work in respect to those parts of the project. But from my understanding, I seek advice from the CFO in regard to this, even though we're not doing that work to support the project, it still needs to be accounted for as a donation.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that's correct.
Thank you. Councillor Martin.
Look, I just really recommend this project. It's just, I know, Tumbarumba Orange people will say it's another facility for tennis. Look, this is a no-brainer. This is a great opportunity by a club who's got off their backsides and put together a program and an infrastructure program to suit the future of community needs locally and on a regional basis. I mean, I had the pleasure of representing the mayor at the Indigenous round at the Oval only last week. And, what Shane Harrington and the club did down there and, bringing, the Clontarf people with Matt Chapman and co on board and, what that can do for women, by having this inclusive facility with state-of-the-art change rooms. Look at the excellent footballers we've produced locally here. We've got Michelle Perry, Piper Duck, and Shani Williams. I mean, the three in the space of a few years that have played for Australia. I mean, they've come from Snowy Valley's council region. It's just magnificent. So, this is a breeding ground for talent, obviously. So we need to nurture it and support it, and the schools will get great use out of this facility, and so will the community and the region. And it'll allow us to hook in with people like the Brumbies and Siru and all these other organisations. And I just think, let's go ahead and let's make it happen.
Thank you, Councillor Rada. I'll put the motion on the vote. With the amended. On 5A, amended, yeah. All in favour? Carried unanimous. Thank you. Local roads and community infrastructure program funding rounds 3. Councillor Cross, Councillor Ham. Pretty self-explanatory there.
Just like to point out, Mr. Mayor, previous comment Councillor Rata made about the fact that the people in the south don't get anything. We have a look at this. They're getting Yarra Creek, Meadows Glenroy Road, and Tumbarumba swimming pool upgrades. So,
Yep, Creek's
oh, sorry, getting my geography wrong.
Depends on where you stand.
Get your GPS for Christmas.
When you look at it, it's 50-50, isn't it?
pretty well.
Yeah, and so,
A bit like that.
I don't see how they can complain about us not doing anything.
Give them a template and they'll complain about anything. Don't worry.
Let's move on. So do I have a move and a seconder? Cross the hand. Let's put the motion in. Any further discussion? No? All in favour? Carried. Thanks. Adoption of the Snowy Valley's Children's Services Strategic Plan. Is anyone moving that? Councillor Hands. Great. Councillor Cross.
And aren't we delighted?
They are absolutely.
Yeah,
true.
and
So you want
and thank you.
anything to say?
A little. I've got my speech.
She likes to get the lectern.
How tremendous that this is
Got me,
here,
Tom.
and to look through the next 5 years where it's going. We have children's services that are viable, that are looked upon from outside as high quality, innovative, and we're looking to, the strategic plan puts in that we will actually expand our services to meet the needs of the more isolated and vulnerable people in our community. I mean, congratulations, it's fantastic, and thank you to all the hard work that went into it. and that there was a lot. Just delighted. And there was one comment saying that this is only about council. It is about council services, but Kate and I are very active in the Snowy Valley's Children's Services Committee, and I think we should develop, it won't be as sophisticated as this, but a similar thing for the region.
And I really endorse what you're saying, but also compliment the staff on putting this together, because having worked in the early childhood industry, I know how many levels and layers of regulations and hoops that you have to go through to put this together. And it really, to be such a concise, beautifully presented, very clear, very easy to read document is just incredible. Really great. Thank you.
Any speakers again? Put the motion. All in favour? It's carried. Thank you unanimously. Move to the minutes of the Audit Risk and Improvement Committee of the 5th of May 2021. Councillor Cross. Councillor Olarte. Anything to add? Yes.
Yes, we welcomed a new committee member to the committee. She has significant, very extensive experience in risk and in financial management and in local government. So she is going to be a real asset. And we get a lot of flack about our financial and the way we do things, but ARIC is an external body that oversees everything we do, all the functions of council, and it's such a reassurance. And I think, people out in the community can feel very assured that we are on track and we're doing it as a really good job. Sure, we can do better, but having ARIC there is very, very reassuring.
Thank you. Further motion, all in favour? Local Traffic Committee, a few items there. Councillor Smith, Councillor Ham.
The number section B, pedestrian arrangements for Bridge Street, Tumbarumba, really good recommendations have been made by the traffic committee. Knowing that area well and having grandchildren crossing those streets, it can be quite dangerous. I'm very pleased to see that they're really on the job making that right.
Thank you. Councillor Olarte.
No, just asking the council if he's aware of any updates with the roundabout lights or whatever down at Mount Brewery.
Yeah, through QSA, we had a presentation in New South Wales. They're very well advanced with design for the roundabout and construction. Yes, sure. Site works. We should see some good stuff in the roundabout.
My understanding is that they were going to start in November. It's going to be a quick meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Ham.
I'd like to draw everyone's attention to the Tumbarumba to Rosewood Marathon on the 9th of October for non-runners. You can book it. But and that's actually run by the ultra marathon committee that normally run through Human Hobble Track, but because of fires they can't. So just full kudos to them for adapting, and full kudos to council for having a great rail trail facility of 21 kilometres that we can run a marathon there and back again. It's great to see.
2.5 minutes.
Well, there back again is one. Up to you.
You've registered, Councillor Ham.
I have registered. Maybe not to the.
I'll be there to rush.
And non-pecuniary interested.
My apologies, I won't be running.
I'll put those all in favour of those recommendations. It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thanks to the minutes of committee meetings, the minutes of the Glenroy Heritage Reserve Committee, Councillor Ham, Councillor Smith.
If I could just speak on that, thank you to Councillor Wright, who was there in my absence, And only reading the minutes, I was saddened to see that Neil Christie and Annalise Sleeber are both resigning at the next AGM. And both of those have been outstanding committee members there. So I hope that they will leave a very big hole. So I hope we have other local people stand up for them.
Motion all in favour? Unanimously. Governing Progress Association, Councillor Cross, Councillor Russell. Rising. All in favour? Carried. Unanimously. Finish the Timber Recreation Reserve AGM, 19th of November 2020. Getting. Yeah. Councillor Graham, Councillor Ola. Nothing around. All in favour? Okay. Councillor Williams, that brings us to the end of the ordinary section. The local government act provides the council may close to the public that part of the meeting is work of confidential nature. Section 10.2 lists such matters. The grounds on which a meeting is closed to the public must be specified in the decision to close the meeting and recorded in the minutes of the meeting. Recommendation I have before us is the council moving to a confidential to consider the matters listed in the confidential section of the agenda in accordance with section 10.2 of the Local Government Act 1993 for the reasons specified.
13.1 urgent motion, please.
No, not at the moment. 13.1 is the Softwood Working Group growing local economies funding support. Do I have a movement of Councillor Cost, Councillor Hand, all in favour?